Hi everyone. In this video, I'm just going to go over the perspective assignment, otherwise known as the car assignment. So I'm making this video after I've marked all the ones that were submitted, and most people did it perfectly. They took all the shots that I asked them to do, and they answered the questions. Some people had the photos were correct and the answers were not correct. Some people, the answer was correct, even though the photos weren't correct. So I just want to go over the assignment, show you what I was expecting, and I'm going to use an example from one of the submissions from one of the students, and then we'll look at the answer sheet. And I'm going over the answer sheet because there will be a question on the final exam that deals with the answer sheet. Anyways, first thing I want us to look at though is the process of downloading the question sheet. There probably were like 4 or 5 people who handed in an answer sheet that was completely blank. And the only way I can think that might happen is people are trying to do the answer sheet on their own. So here I am in week 7, which is when this assignment was assigned. And there's the answer sheet right there that I wanted you guys to download. And if you just click on it, it will actually open up in Fanshawe Online. Or if it might sometimes open up in another window, but it'll still be on a web browser. And when it's on the web browser, you can actually go in there and type and put in stuff. So I'm just going to put my name, Giles. And if I scroll down here, I can just go in there and I can type the answer, okay? However, whenever you edit this PDF on the browser, it doesn't get saved. So I think what's happening is some people, they're putting in their answers and they're scrolling down to the bottom and then they're clicking download. And then when you go to the download, let's see if I got it here. Then when you go to the downloads folder, there's the document there, and I'm just going to open it up, and it's blank. It doesn't show my name, it doesn't show anything. So what I wanted you to do was actually download it first. Download it, and then put in the answers and save it with a new name. So I'm just going to do that right now. What's the answer? Well, for those of you who got it wrong, the answer is distance. So the change in perspective was caused by the change in the distance between the camera and the subject. And if you said lens instead of camera, that's fine. If you just said the distance, I still accept that as a correct answer. The more important thing though, the more important part of this assignment answer sheet though is this part right here where I wanted you to explain how did your photos help you to determine that and come to that conclusion. And I'm just gonna copy and paste the answer that I wanted you guys to type in there. And there it is right there. Some people wrote a lot. They wrote a paragraph, but if they had the right answer, I gave them the marks. But this is probably the shortest way to sort of express it. And you had to take 5 photos. We'll look at them in a second. The last 3 images are all shot with different lenses, different focal lengths, but after cropping, the perspective is the same. So focal length is not responsible for perspective change. It is distance from the subject. So for some of you, you probably didn't come to that conclusion. And when I looked at your photos, I noticed that, assuming that's what you were looking at when you were answering the questions, because you didn't crop the car, you didn't see what I was getting at. So let's just look at these 5 images. This is from one of your classmates handed this in. And let's just take a look at the first photo. I'm just going to make that a little bit smaller so we can see it. There we go. So this is their first shot. And if you looked at the shot list that I asked for on the instruction sheet, the first one was the wide angle. And I asked you to get as close to the car as you can, but still have the car in the shot. And there were some people who, they left too much room, on the left and right and top and bottom. I want you to get as close as you possibly can. Even this one, they probably could have gotten a little bit closer because there's a bit of space here and there's space there, and they probably could have got a bit closer. But what I want you to see is, because we're so close to the car, we need to use a wide angle lens to get the angle of view. And if you look at that front tire, look how big it is, and look how small the back tire is. Look at how much landscape there is in the background. And this car looks very distorted. The front is way bigger than the back of the car. Then I asked you to photograph with a normal lens. Could be a 40, could be 50 millimeter. And this will require you to back up. And as you back up, because your angle of view has changed, you need to back up in order to still fit the car in the frame. And so after taking the photo and you analyze the picture of the car, you can see that, hey, the front wheel is still bigger than the back wheel, but it's not as dramatic as it was in this wide angle shot. So normal, the wheels are starting to get a little bit closer in size. The car still looks distorted, but it's a bit less distorted. And if you take a look at the background, our background is starting to become enlarged. It almost appears as if the background is moving forward, getting closer to the car. And we see less of the background. If I look here, we can see a building or something way over here on the left. And there's some houses or something like that going on. But in this shot, the background has gotten enlarged, so we lost some of that. The last shot I wanted you to take was with the telephoto lens. So the angle of view would be even more narrow. So again, you have to back up further away from the car. And if you look at the wheels of the car, now they're really starting to look like they're about the same size. And the car does not look distorted anymore. It looks like a very natural shape, at least to me. And if you look at the background has gotten larger again. So there's our normal, and there's our wide angle, and you can see how that background just seems to be getting bigger and bigger, and it appearing to come closer and closer to the car, and we have that compression. So between these three shots, perspective has changed. However, we've also changed our distance, and we changed our focal length. So my question to you is, what caused this change in perspective? Was it the distance or was it the lens? Well, we don't know, because both of those things changed. So what we have to do is try to isolate it. So what I asked you to do was stay in one location, and in this case, it was the telephoto location. We could have used the normal location, but since we're at the telephoto location for our third shot, I asked you guys to stop right there and switch lenses. And so what this student has done is they photographed the car with the wide angle lens. And I know this was the wide angle lens because I can check the metadata, and I can also notice that the detail in the license plate is not as sharp. Well, that's because if they shot this with a wide angle lens, they would have captured all this scenery, and the car would have been just this tiny little part in the center of the photo. But I asked you guys to go into Lightroom or go into Photoshop and crop that car, and crop this car so it matches our telephoto shot. And this last shot is their normal cropped. And same thing, there would have been a lot of space around the car. Then I asked you guys to go in there and crop it. And after cropping the three photos of the car, we notice that the perspective hasn't changed. So even though those last three photos were taken with three different lenses or three different focal lengths, all three shots of the car look the same. So the only conclusion that we can come to is that, hey, when the focal length changes, perspective doesn't necessarily change. But when distance changes, there's definitely a change in perspective. So in this case, our last three shots, we did not change our distance, and the perspective didn't change either. We did change our focal length on all the last three shots, but the car appearance compared to the background, the overall perspective did not change. So some people talked about the background changing, and so it has to be lens, but lens just changes angle of view. We could have, if I were to go back to these pictures just to sum up here, we could have taken this normal shot. We could have taken it with a telephoto lens. The only problem is the car would not have fit in the shot. But we could have taken multiple shots with the telephoto lens, stitched all the pictures together with the telephoto lens that were captured with the telephoto lens. And after we stitched them all together, it would look just like this. It would look like it was shot with a normal lens because we would have been taking those pictures from that location. So get back to our answer sheet. What was I looking for? This is a very short, to the point answer. The last 3 images were all shot with different lenses, different focal lengths, but after cropping, the perspective was the same. And I could probably put a comma there. The perspective was the same. So focal length is not responsible for perspective change. It's the distance from the subject. So there you go. That's the answer I was looking for. And I'll just remind you, there will be a question about this on the final exam. So if you have any questions about your mark for that assignment, or you don't quite understand some of the things that I was talking about, or maybe you disagree with the answer, then hey, send me an email or just come and visit me in my office.